You ready?
Yep, we're ready.
Okay.
Okay. Good evening. I'd like to call the meeting to order and welcome everyone.
Good evening. This meeting is being held in accordance with the schedule of meetings adopted at the organizational meeting held January 6th, 2021. Adequate notice of this regular meeting of the Kenilworth Board of Education has been provided to the Home News Tribune, the Star Ledger, the local source, on January 8th, 2021. A copy has been filed with the Kenilworth Borough Clerk, posted in the board office, the Kenilworth Borough Hall, Brearley, and Harding Schools, as is provided by the Open Public Meetings Act.
Thank you, Mr. Ganella. Please join us in salute to the flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Ganella, can we please have roll call?
Biner. Here. Braun.
Here.
David.
Here.
Drogan.
Here.
Haberther. Here. Jankowicz.
Here.
Nadati. Here. Kenichi.
Here.
Zimmerman. Here. All present.
Thank you. Receiving of the minutes, can we please have a motion to accept the minutes from November 8th, 2021?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Jankowicz, seconded by Mr. Haberther. All those in favor of receiving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Reading and acceptance of monthly correspondence. Mr. Ganella, do we have any correspondence this evening?
We do not have any regular correspondence this evening.
Okay, thank you so much. Next up, superintendent's reports and presentations, Mr. Arlington.
Good evening. Assessments go through many transitions. At the high school level, some may remember the High School Proficiency Test, or HSPT. This then morphed into the HESPA. Around 2010, New Jersey began to administer the PARCC assessment. And then a few years ago, New Jersey broke away from that consortium and began to administer the New Jersey Student Learning Assessment, or the NJSLA. These results were the basis for the leadership team presentation we shared a few months ago as part of our State of the Schools address. In October and November, our students participated in the Start Strong assessments. Tonight, I'm sharing those results. I'm going to ask that we read them as an addendum to that State of the Schools presentation. As you know, I always like to frame our work around our district goals, and these Start Strong assessments bump up against our district goal to maximize our use of data to improve academic achievement. This is the first and maybe the last time our students take the Start Strong assessments. Under the Every Student Succeeds Act, states are required to assess students per federal regulations in ELA, math, and science in certain grade levels each year. New Jersey applied for a waiver to the US DOE asking for a one-year moratorium on standardized testing during the 2021 school year. It was granted to New Jersey so long as districts implemented an assessment at the start of the 21 school year. And so that's what these Start Strong assessments are. So while the accountability for districts looks different than prior assessment systems, these Start Strong tests meet the requirements of the waiver the federal government proffered to New Jersey. And it also gives educators assessment data about learning loss and acceleration during the pandemic. These were some of the intentions for the Strong assessments, to produce information that should be used and held up against the New Jersey Student Learning Standards. They were to be administered quickly and provide immediate results, which they were. And then, as I just mentioned, they helped meet the federal flexibility waiver that the DOE, the United States DOE, granted to the New Jersey DOE. Some key features of the assessments were their brevity. So these tests were much shorter in length and scope than the NJSLA or the PARCC, which came before it. They were administered in grades 4 to 10 in ELA and math, along with Algebra 1, 2, and geometry. ESSA also indicates that students need to be tested in science 3 times during their careers. And so students were tested last year in grades 6, 9, and 12. Districts also had great flexibility as to when those assessments could be administered. These were computer scored, multiple choice with some writing pieces embedded within. The reporting looks a little different, so you're not going to get a score. I'll talk about that in a second. I'm sorry. You're not going to get a numeric score. You're going to get a sort of categorization. And then a key feature is around the idea of support. So students were assessed on the grade level standards that they were expected to have mastered last year. So in other words, at the beginning of the 5th grade year, our 5th graders were assessed on the 4th grade standards, and these results indicate how much strong support, some support, or less support students need in those standards during the course of the school year. So when you look at this, you want to see as much gold in these pie charts as possible, right? Because that means students don't need a ton of support in meeting the grade level standards. But again, this is way more high level than the PARC or NJSLA, because these assessments were meant to be formative, and I'll talk a little bit about that at the end of the presentation. All right. So in ELA, in grade 4, 36% of our students need less support, and in math, 30% of our students need less support, which means our intervention efforts should be focused on students who need some support. Those may be students who get tier 1 or tier 2 interventions, and then strong support would warrant more significant either differentiation or tiered interventions at the classroom level. 5th graders, about half of our 5th graders need less support in ELA, and about a third of them need less support in math. In 6th grade, 50% of our students struggled with mastering the grade level standards that came before, and these results really speak to, well, a host of things, right? But one of their intentions, as I mentioned earlier, was to zoom in on COVID-related, potentially COVID-related learning loss. In 7th grade, 41% of ELA students need less support, and 25% need less math support. In 8th grade, you see the results here. Okay. So then in 9th grade, at least for math, the results become a little more subject specific. Right? So 54% of students in 9th grade struggled to meet, at least on this assessment, struggled to meet the 8th grade student learning standards in English language arts. In 10th grade, 41% need less support. Algebra 1 is definitely an area to zoom in on. In fact, I met with my leadership team members today to continue the conversation about the ways we're looking at algebra in our district to get these graphs to look somewhat different, right? So looking at a whole host of measures, many of which were we discussed in the State of the Schools presentation in October. You see the results here for geometry. And then Algebra 2, 50% of students need some support, 18% need less support, and 32% need strong support. Science looks a little different because the New Jersey, the next generation science standards cut across different cluster areas, right? So in science, the next gen science standards focus on the 3 types of science: physical, life in earth and space. So those are the big clusters that, regardless of what grade level you're in, those are the clusters to focus on. 9th grade, 46% of our students need some support. And in 12th grade, about half of the students need strong support in science. So the big question is always, how are we using these results? So we're using them to inform a lot of the efforts we talked about in the State of the Schools presentation, right? This is just one data source. How does that triangulate or connect to a bunch of the other data sources we have already in-house, like the MAP assessments or like the DIBELS assessment? We're also using these assessment results to inform Tier 1 classroom instruction, right? That's the instruction everyone gets, to drive some professional learning in ELA and math, identify themes and trends in learning, and then allocate resources in a more measured way. So again, these 5 bullets should be read as a winnowing down of those really detailed, comprehensive plans for school improvements we outlined in October. Also keep in mind these assessments represent just a spot of time. But what's kind of exciting about these strong assessments generally is that they're different than the PARCC or the New Jersey Student Learning Assessment assessments because they're like a different bucket of the assessment system, right? So usually we think of assessment as assessment for and of learning. The of is when the learning is already done. So when the PARCC or the NJSLA happens in the spring, that's really a reporting out on student progress, as opposed to these strong assessments, which are assessments for learning or for the formative pieces of learning, meaning that we can use these results to actually drive and inform instruction. I guess like the stock example of the difference between summative and formative would be the chef who makes soup, right, and then he serves the soup and the guest tastes the soup. That's the summative part. What it is, as opposed to the formative part is when he's making the soup and eating the soup and testing it, he can then go back and add ingredients to affect the summative or end result. So these Start Strong assessments give us that opportunity to think about data and how we use that for teaching and learning throughout the rest of the school year. I'm happy to take questions now, though, Madam President.
So when we look at the different classes that have the need or need strong support, are we able to tell, so let's say as an example, there are 2 or more actual classes teaching science or Algebra 1, are we able to see if one particular class needs all the strong support and the other doesn't?
Yes.
So we are, okay, and we're looking to address that?
Yes.
Are you in that situation, are you seeing big variations where like one teacher or classroom with, is that big
it would be,
difference?
nice is not the right word, but it would be black and white if that was the case, and that's really not the case. There's a pretty wide bell curve around that performance. Yeah. Ms. Zimmerman?
Strong assessments. Were our students, I don't know how to put it, but except to say, was there some sort of grade attached to the Start Strong assessment, or was this similar to a normal pre-SGO where the students know they're not going to receive a grade per se on it in their marking period grade for the average?
I'd have to go back and confirm, but I believe no grade was assigned to these. I do know we talked about meeting with students at the classroom level, the principals, requesting that they take the assessment, the students take the assessment seriously, but I'd have to fact check whether a grade was assigned to it, but I don't believe it was.
All right, because that's one component that I think plays into it as well, from my own experience with students. Sure. When they have the pre-SGO, or this year also the Start Strong was our pre-SGO, the idea that, is this going to affect my grade? Do I get a grade for this? And when you answer honestly, well, you don't get graded, but this gives me the information to know where you're at so we can know what we need to work on to improve. Those students, particularly the older ones, and we're seeing the numbers getting more and more skewed as we hit the middle school and high school, take the, all right, push a button kind of attitude and don't care, which then doesn't give us true data that really helps in what do the students need, and maybe putting things in a position where it looks bad where it may not be. So I have concerns with that. I mean, obviously the numbers, particularly in some of those categories, are horrendous in terms of how much between needs strong support and needs some support. When you combine those 2 numbers, we're better than half and then some for many of the categories. But if it was partially related to the fact that the students just weren't taking the test seriously,
Sure.
then that's, again, skewed data. How useful is it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, well, a couple of things. I think that's why you have to be careful not to create all of your interventions around these assessment results, right? They're part of a bigger picture. I think that's maybe what I'm hearing you say a little bit.
Yes.
Also, we don't have access to this type of data, but we do, as it relates to like the MAP assessments that we talk a lot about, we have done some exercises where we've gone in on the back end and seen how long it took a student to complete a MAP assessment, right? So we can tell those students who took the test seriously and those who didn't, right?
Right, because if they go too fast, they get locked out, you have to let them back in.
Yeah, and sometimes like when we use like, let's say MAP, just to identify whether a student is entitled to interventions, I've actually just worked with a teacher the other day who said, you know, she got her list because we're looking at more like flexible groupings and said like, this kid doesn't need to be in interventions. And then when you look in the back end, it's more of what you said, which is he didn't really take the MAP test too seriously. And so I think that's more of building a stronger case for the need for multiple data points to really get a holistic picture of what the kid can and cannot do.
Right, because, you know, the example of students that I had taking the initial pre-SGO Start Strong, who did very poorly.
Sure.
When they had the first benchmark, which was again, set assessment that they got a grade for and would affect their marking period grade, it was like two different students had written the essays because they knew this one counted. And it's sad, but it's the reality of it. The kids pick up on that.
Sure. Mark?
I guess I have another question, and apologies if you've said it.
Sure.
How were the assessments determined? Like how did you determine strong support versus
Yeah.
you know,
So
little
we
support?
don't, yeah, good question. That's actually a great question. We're not determining that. The state of New Jersey determines that, right? So we're not scoring these assessments. The
What criteria do they use to actually?
it's a scale, right? We're not always privy to what that scale is, and if it's a sliding scale or not. But like when we got the park, we knew the scale of like, I don't remember off the top of my head, but it was like 750 maybe. Is that right? 750 to 800 was, you were in a certain category.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm gonna go back even further. Like, 200 used to be like, or 300 used to be advanced proficient in the NJASC. There are these ranges that the state gives you. Yeah. So this was the first level of data. The next level of data would be, actually it came in today, individual student reports that will be mailed home to families soon, where you'll have like more cluster level information. Another kind of report, which wouldn't be useful for this venue, is to look at how students did on particular questions, which are then aligned to a standard, right? So if we see that kids across the board in 4th grade are having trouble on question 4, and question 4 is tied to the standard that asks student to identify words in context, right? We know that then that's an area that we need to zoom in on, right? And that's more like more data that's beneficial to the teacher to help like blueprint out her instruction.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
I don't know if this is new business or it's just a new point, but we're talking about assessments and performance, et cetera. So
Sure.
we just gave a pretty good contract, and the school district is currently one of the highest paid in the county, right? And our scores are not that great. So, I mean, is there any way we could get like a teacher's performance, like a report card every 60 days on tardiness, how they're performing versus like a 4th grade teacher versus another 4th grade teacher, or is their class doing better, or are they, are they teaching at the right, where they're supposed to be on each segment, whatever you want to call it in the district. But, I mean, it's sort of like with comes a big contract in a higher paid district, comes a higher degree of accountability.
Sure.
Right? And I don't see how teachers are performing versus each other or other school districts or whatever. And I think I would like to see that. I don't know if the other board agrees with me, but I think we need to see some kind of information every other month on how teachers are performing. So I don't know what you think of that. That's kind of just.
Yeah, so I guess I'd have to think more deeply about how to report that data out to you in an appropriate way that would be appropriate for board members to have access to, because there's, I imagine, lots of legal and personnel implications.
Well,
there.
every corporation does that now. They call these huddle boards where you're matched up against your team or another team or person versus person.
Sure.
I know it's a whole different world, but,
Yeah, so again, let me think and get some guidance
and I'm
on,
only one person, so I don't want you to do work if the board doesn't feel like maybe we should have that information or don't care to have it, so. I'm just one person on the board.
I will say, as part of that, I read every single observation that comes into the district, so every single observation that a leadership team member writes, I review to look for trends and also to provide feedback where appropriate to the actual leaders who are writing those. Since I've gotten here, I've also implemented pre-tenure check-ins several times throughout the year. Actually, we had one today that lasted several hours where the leadership team reviewed the progress of pre-tenure teachers to discuss strengths and growth areas. And while that may not seem impactful, we have, I think, 50 some odd pre-tenured teachers. And so for a district our size, that's about a third of our teachers are pre-tenured. So really looking to invest support and time and energy into our newer teachers to make sure that they're the ones who can help us in the heavy lifting that we need to get done is part, I think, of the accountability system that you're speaking of. As for the bigger requests, I guess I would defer to the board president to either have a conversation. Is that something the full board is interested in? And if it is, I would just ask for some time in thinking about how to present that out in an appropriate and professional way.
See, I just don't know, like, I'm just using the fourth grade because that's the last thing I saw. But if there's
Yeah,
a
sure.
teacher that's class is always underperforming, kids are always underperforming in that class, right? They're not teaching at the same level the other teachers are. I don't know, should we know that? Does the board need to know that, or is that just not our responsibility? But I think I would like to know that.
Well, maybe it would be more helpful to do like marking periods. There's lots of ways to skew it
Well,
out. So,
marking
like-
periods is what, 3 times?
So, like-
How many marking periods are there
So
a
like
year?
in a building level, you would get reports on what your teachers' grades are and what grades they're giving and stuff, but then you have to think of,
Well,
okay,
listen, I don't want us, that's up to Kyle and the administration to kind of figure out.
can
And
kinda-
if you guys want some additional reports that we don't see all the time, that's the only thing I'm asking for. How it's put together, the process Kyle wants to put in there, if that's what the board wants, then I'm fine with that. That's your
Okay,
call.
so
I
give me
just-
some time. I understand your request. Give me some time to think about that.
Okay.
And I'll share out some thinking, if that's feasible. Yeah.
Since I was on the board, as the teachers, we didn't feel we're always teaching up to the potential of the child. They just kind of let it go. And I'm sure a lot of them might be gone, but that was always a concern.
And I'm not saying the performance is bad or anything like that. I just think we need to see the information. That's all.
Sure, understood. Okay.
So sorry if I went off on a tangent on this.
I have a few more items? Yeah, okay. Before moving forward with superintendent report items, I'd like to acknowledge the passing of 2 former board members, Walter Sosnowski and Helen Pastor. Walter Sosnowski was a board member from January 2016 until October 2016. Although Mr. Sosnowski's board tenure predated my time with the district, I got to know him over the past few years and can attest to how much he cared about Kenilworth. Helen Pastor served 1 term on the Board of Ed from 2000 to 2003. During her tenure on the board, she served on the Finance and Facilities and Personnel Committees. She was a strong advocate for Burley athletics with a passion for softball and basketball. To thank them and honor them for their service on the board, I'd like to ask for a moment of silence now. Thank you. Some notes on the agenda. On tonight's agenda, there's a resolution to adjust the school calendar to make up for the lost PD day due to Hurricane Ida. I think dovetailing off of what we were just mentioning, there's too much crucial professional learning in our district not to make that day up. Several drafts and iterations were created with input from a handful of stakeholders. However, each make-up day proposed had affordances and constraints. In thinking of this rejiggering as a design challenge, I quickly learned one of the significant constraints was not affecting the end-of-year schedule, including project graduation and other celebratory events. Therefore, Friday, February 18th will be a day off for students and a PD day for staff. We'll take back the 3rd Give Back Snow Day to make up for this instructional day. And so school will now be in session on Tuesday, May 31st. And we'll reissue our school calendar and make parents aware shortly. I appreciate you supporting this somewhat complex decision. Under retirements and under the personnel section of tonight's agenda, you'll be approving the retirement of Lynn Smith. I've had the opportunity to interact with Lynn in ongoing ways and in many capacities. However, most of my interactions with Lynn have been in her post as president of the Teachers Association. I thank her for her willingness to partner together to problem solve and keep our district on a forward-moving trajectory. Lynn, I wish you the best. Enjoy your retirement. In matters related to the Teachers Association, after many months and hours of conversation and meetings tonight, the board will be voting on the successor agreements for all 3 bargaining units of the KEA: teachers, secretaries and aides, and custodians. Negotiations are not an easy process, right? There are at times competing interests and almost always varied opinions and strong belief systems, not only across both sides of the table, but sometimes even on the same side of the table. I believe these 3 contracts represent a fair settlement to our employees and uphold the board's responsibility to the community to act as responsible fiduciaries. I appreciate the teachers who sat on the committees and the board's group, led by Mr. Ladati and supported by Mr. Haberther, Mr. Dragon, and Mrs. Braun. I look forward to our continued uninterrupted work of striving to be the best, strongest district we can be. Speaking of Mrs. Braun, I also would like to publicly extend my sincere appreciation to you, Janine. You've served the board for 13 years. You've participated in the board's negotiations committee and also serving as the chairperson of the policy committee. As all board members, you were elected to a volunteer position and have spent many, many, many hours committed to ensuring a quality education for our students. Personally, I appreciate your dedication to the kids of Kenilworth and the calm, measured, and fair approach you bring to doing the school district's business. You come to meetings prepared, avoid surprises, and contribute to our work in measured and thoughtful ways. And I've always personally felt supported by you, mostly because I know you support our district and its vision. So thank you for your years of service. Moving away from celebratory items to more pro forma items, you have the HIB report in your packet. Tonight you'll be voting on October's HIB cases that I shared with you in November's meeting. There were 0 founded cases in October. You also have in your packet November's cases of HIB. There was 1 founded case at Harding and 1 founded case at Brearley. However, there are 2 open cases at Brearley that we're still actively investigating, and so I'll share more information about those with you next month. You also have the November enrollment and discipline report. I am happy to take questions on those.
Anybody have questions?
Yeah, okay. I just close by ending and wishing our entire school community a happy and healthy holiday season. It's been one heck of a first few months of school. Stressful but exciting because we've made a lot of progress, and I know on behalf of my team we look forward to more progress through bringing in the second half of the school year. Okay, that concludes my report.
Anybody have questions or comments for Kyle or anything to add? Right now?
No? Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so next we'll have report of committees, review of resolutions, and board discussion. Mr. Ganell, do you want to review the schedule and the structure, please? Thank you.
Last week I sent you, we have 2 discussion items I'd like to briefly discuss. I sent you the proposed meeting schedule for next year. As I noted, I'd like to include, have you have an opportunity to review that prior to putting it on the organizational agenda for January 5th, just in case we want to make any adjustments to that. We could do that prior to going into the January 5th meeting. So that is our typical schedule of meetings, and it allows us to have an opportunity to, in addition, have our regular monthly meeting, take care of some budget issues in the March and the April area, as well as in June, July, and August, put us in a position to hire staff when it is necessary. We don't want to be shorthanded going into the school year. Sometimes we'll have resignations during the summer, so that last meeting on August 29th allows us to hopefully be able to be in a position to hire some people at the last minute going into the new school year. Even though they in themselves have to sometimes give 60 days notice, it just gives us an extra couple of weeks head start there. So are there any questions regarding the meeting schedule that we presented to you last week? No? Okay. The other item is, I just regularly bring this up. Every couple years, I do bring this up. Our bylaw regarding policies, regarding board committees, 0155, outlines the structure for board committees. And it has standing committees of the finance and facilities, the personnel management, curriculum instruction, and the steering committee. The steering committee consists of the chairperson of each one of those other 3 committees. It doesn't have a standing committee for policy. We traditionally have done the policy committee as an ad hoc committee. I bring this to your attention just so you know that this is an opportunity going into the new organizational year to make that modification. You could do that in January, but I just wanted to bring that to your attention. Some boards don't have a policy committee, but rather assign the committees to either the steering committee or to the specific committee that the policy might have jurisdiction over. So if it's something regarding a policy regarding student achievement, it might fall under the curriculum instruction. If it has something to do with teacher evaluation, it might fall under personnel management. If it has something to do with fire code, it might fall under the facilities. So it's just a different way of approaching the committee structure. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. So next week, or a couple weeks from now, when you're having those discussions at the organizational meeting, you can make those adjustments at that time if you so choose. Or, it's not broken, you can keep it the way it is. Okay? Those are the 2 discussion items that I want to bring up for you this evening.
Thank you. So if anybody has questions or about the calendar or any changes, if you could email Vincent right before the organizational meeting. And then if anybody has any thoughts, I guess, about the structure, if they want to keep it the same or not, maybe we can reach out before, or we can have a discussion, you know, on the 5th. Just to think.
Or right now, if you
Yeah,
want
what is everyone?
Committee, how come it was never made never made a formal committee prior? Any specific reason?
You know, I'd probably have to look at Strauss Esme, their sample policies. I'm not sure why. Could go back and look at policy 0155 and see if we want to amend it to make it a standing committee. But I'm not sure if there's some other overriding factor behind it.
Or go back to having the individual committees handle the policies that apply to their
Right.
area of topic.
Yeah, that approach makes sense as well, but I just didn't know
Yeah.
if there's a pro to doing it the other way as well.
So how would that work if, let's say the finance committee, we don't have a separate meeting in January, but a policy issue comes up, that would be directed to the finance committee, or facilities committee, would that include us having to come here or
No, I
meet
think
and discuss
most-
it,
most-
or how would it work?
Most policy discussions can be done via email,
Okay, that's what I just want to make sure, because you know, for,
right? It's currently how you do most of the
Most
stuff.
often they're mandated.
communicating.
right, exactly, yeah, that's why I think it's, you know, I would think we'd keep it the same as it is now. But that's again, I'm just one person, so.
Vincent, didn't you
I think
mention
it's
that
worked.
we're at, like, the policy that's in place now, we're not following the way it's?
Well, we're not following the strict standard of it, but you are allowed to have ad hoc committees. So you created an ad hoc policy committee.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to make sure
I
everyone
agree.
understands that the policy committee is not a standing
Either
committee.
keep it,
That's all.
so, okay.
Okay. We've had this discussion before.
Yeah.
It's not,
Okay.
we've always gone back to the policy.
I'm okay with leaving it the way it is.
Okay, if everybody's okay, then to move on, okay? I guess we'll start with finance and facilities. Mr. Ladati,
Thank you.
please.
Before I give my report, Janine, I just want to thank Janine for being on the board and serving and work. I think we did some great things as board members together and with everybody here. And especially want to thank you for being part of the negotiations committee, being the stabling and prepared force on that team. So I just want to thank you personally for the time you put in for this district and school and town. But thank you. So, okay, now to the fund finance report. So, the administrators have been working on their portions of the 22-23 budget. Mr. Ganella has also been updating the Excel program and preparing for their January submissions. The mid-year budget review with the county, which is typically conducted in December each year, has not even been scheduled as of yet. The 2021 annual budget, the state has extended the deadline for the comprehensive annual financial report. We can't complete that report until the state issues their audit report. So the new deadline is February 22. We are preparing, and the district is prepared for the winter weather. The equipment is in working condition. The staff's ready to go. And I'm sure they'll do their outstanding job as they've done every year if we do have a snowstorm. We did have to buy a new snow blower attachment for the Toro deal, but we did keep the old one because that's in reserve also in case that one, we need it. But it's a key piece of the equipment as it does all the sidewalks in the district. I'll get to where I have an issue with the line item transfer for that, and I'll get that when I get to resolutions. I hope you all had a chance to take a look at the new modular classrooms that are going in. They're there now. The only thing, right now, we're just getting the utilities put in. That's going to be done over the next few months and all the connections, et cetera. But if you have an opportunity to drive by, I mean, it looks so much better than the old temporary classrooms that were 50 years old. The finance committee made a decision to do a little upgrades on what it looked like, because the initial ones didn't look so good. They looked more like just trailers that were parked there. You know, so I think the way it's going to look is going to be great, and I think it's certainly an upgrade for the students in the district. So that was a great decision to get that done. Plus the other ones were dangerous. Resolutions 1 to 3, or the superintendent's report, which you just heard. I've reviewed all the financial records of the billing. They're all in order. I'm just going to touch on a few because I know Kyle hit on most of those. 8 is the QSAC approval and submission. 9 is Vince's reconciliation of the checking account, basically, right, Vince? And we did find 2 uncashed checks, which we've taken care of. 11, 12, and 13 are the contracts for all 3 groups. I just want to thank Janine and Ryan and Paulette, along with Kyle and Vince, for always, helping us out during those negotiations with support and information. Let's see, and that's it. And 16 is the first payment for the temporary classrooms. So I know I just jumped around a little bit, but I thought I would just hit the key items. So if there's any questions on the resolutions, we'll take them now, myself, Vince, and Kyle. So. Oh, the line item transfers. The line item transfer, I'm sorry, that's my fault. So we transferred the money for the snow blower from the facility supplies to equipment to make the purchase. Okay, so that's all it was.
It's just that if I remember correctly, there were other times it said, but it can't go over a certain amount of monies, but that's.
Right.
So is it, we're not showing it anymore, or we will show it, or it just was left out?
It wasn't left out. It was just, I guess I left it out, and I
Well, I'm just saying,
apologize for the
usually I
price.
see
So
an amount,
it was
not-
over, the amount we said not to, that didn't have to be reported on. So I could get you that amount. I apologize for not having it. I'm
just wondered what
not
happened.
prepared. Sorry.
Just clarify something. Inquiry across curriculum. I'm not quite sure what that is. It says inquiry across curriculum. For Dana, the virtual?
Inquiry across curriculum. So just a way of thinking about teaching and learning, right? So how do you get students to wonder and inquire about their topic or, what they're learning? Inquiry.
Just,
Yeah, sure.
I thought you explained the self-evaluation.
Well, the 14 is the conduit money, that goes, we just get the state money, we're the conduit for St. Teresa's, so they can't get the money directly, so that's what that is.
And on 16, so that, you just paid them a lot of money, it's almost done, or is it, it wasn't?
It won't be done until the end of February, so we're not paying, we'll pay them as the work gets completed,
Okay, so this is just partial.
yes.
Sorry, I just,
No, you have every right to ask any question you want. I'll do my best, or if I can't do it, then I'll
good.
do the expert. Bail me out. Well, see no other questions, thank you. Oh, sorry, did you have something else? Okay.
thank you.
Anybody else? No? Thank you, Mr. Ladati. Okay, next up, Personnel and Management, Mr. Haberthor.
Thank you. There's 10 resolutions tonight. The first two, 17 and 18, are the accepting of retirements. 19 and 20 approve hires for supervisors of special services and projects and a middle school science teacher. Resolution 21 is a maternity leave of absent request. Resolution 22 approves additional teaching sections for the 21-22 school year. Resolution 23 approves co-curricular stipend positions for the 21-22 school year. Resolution 24 approves athletic positions for the 21-22 school year. 25 improves home instruction, is the approval of home instruction. Resolution 26 is the approval of substitute staff. Bless you. Any questions? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Haberthor. Next up, Curriculum and Instruction, Mr. Jankowicz.
Sure, thank you. 3 resolutions this evening. Resolution 27 is the adoption of certain curriculum. Resolution 28 is an addendum to a resolution from August related to evaluation systems and rubrics. And Resolution 29 is the HIB report for October 2021. Any questions?
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, Mr. Jankowicz. Next up, Policy Review, Mrs. Braun.
We have 2 resolutions. Resolution 30 is the first reading. Policy 164813, school employee vaccination requirements. It's mandatory, and it just satisfies the vaccination and testing policy requirement that was in Executive Order 253. Policy 164814, safety plan for healthcare settings in school buildings, COVID-19. It's a mandatory policy. New Jersey Public Employees Occupational Safety and Health had adopted the emergency temporary standard that was issued by OSHA, and that was aimed at protecting workers facing the highest COVID hazards, particularly those working in healthcare settings, but it didn't necessarily address the school situation and school nurse's office, and this now aligns, it's been developed to align with that and to adopt the emergency temporary standard for school nurse offices. Resolution 31 is to adopt policy 0131, bylaws, policies, and regulations. It's a revised bylaw guide, and it outlines a process that is more likely to be used in school districts. Policy 2421, career and technical education. There's revisions to the policy guide, which are minor and require school district to determine career and technical education program offered to their students. Most school districts with high schools offer the programs through their county vocational school district, and that's what Kenilworth does. Policy 3134, assignment of extra duties. It addresses the Board of Education's right to assign extra duties to teaching staff members. That's it.
Any questions? Okay, thank you. Any other questions before we move on to old business? Okay, any old business? Okay, as Mr. Ladati mentioned, the Board of Ed and the KEA have agreed upon contracts and salary guides, and the board will be voting on and approving them this evening. The contracts are valid for 3 years and begin July 1st, 2021 and end June 30th, 2024. Okay. Any new business? Okay? We would like to thank everyone in our community and schools for their cooperation, dedication, and time during 2021 in working to keep schools open, students learning, and healthy and safe. And we would like to convey our best wishes for a happy holiday and happy and healthy new year. Okay? No one else? Okay. At this time, we'd like to open up the meeting for the public to comment. Is there a motion to open the meeting to the public? Is there a second? Second. Okay, motion made by Mr. Haberther, seconded by Mr. Ladati. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. The meeting is now open to the public. Any public would they like to speak at this time? Okay. Can I have a motion to close the meeting to the public? Okay, motion made by Mr. Haberther, seconded by Mr. Ladati. All those in favor of closing the meeting to the public, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you so much. Meeting is now closed to the public. Mr. Ganella, are we ready to have a roll call of resolutions?
Actually, can we back up to correspondence? We did have correspondence.
Okay,
I
sure.
did not see it in my little notes here. We
Sure,
actually
no
have,
problem.
5 items this evening. A letter from M.L. Fabian, our attorney, regarding board members' ability to endorse an opinion regarding the board members' ability to endorse candidates in written editorials. A letter from New Jersey School Boards Association to its members regarding the New Jersey School Boards Association expressing its disapproval of the New Jersey School Board Association's letter sent out on September 29th, 2021. We had the TAB committee meeting minutes from 11/9/21. We have a letter from Executive County Superintendent Darrell Palmieri to Anne Marie Weiss from the Winfield Board of Education regarding the Winfield Park Send Receive relationship. And finally, we have a memo from Joanne Rajapi, Union County Clerk, to myself regarding election certification results from the general election of November 2nd, 2021.
Thank you. Is that it?
That's public correspondence. So
Okay. Yeah. Can we please have a motion to accept the monthly correspondence? Okay, second. Okay, motion. They're on there. We didn't have somebody read it. That's why I asked if anybody wanted to. It's there. We didn't review it. It's under other resolutions. Yeah. Okay.
Can I ask a question? How, the TAB committee met, how did that go? Did it,
Good.
I mean,
Ryan, do you want to, or we can?
Really well. I mean, I think having not had one since I've been on the board, it was interesting going into it. Kyle definitely helped in preparing sort of an agenda and sort of an agenda to follow. And it went well. You know, everyone had very cordial and had a very good discussion. And there's definite interest in having another at an appropriate time. I don't know how often these are supposed to be spaced out. If once a year, twice a year. But I think we all walked away feeling it was time well spent.
good.
And then we tentatively said, right, we'll do one in the spring to kind of,
Yeah.
you know.
Kyle, you didn't attend, right?
Nope. No, it was just, I think it was just myself, Dr. Panici,
Yeah, Nancy
Mr.
and I used
David,
to do-
right? Yeah.
Nancy and I used to do them every other month, so I just, my only concern with that was, I just don't want those TAB committees to come in to try to circumvent what Kyle's trying.
No, they're,
Yeah, no, it was very positive. It wasn't,
It could lead to that, so I just,
Yeah.
just my thought process. And that was always something I had in the back of my mind too when they were telling us stuff, but it's a great job.
yeah, no, so
No, you worked, no, great job, thank you guys. I think it's important.
you were on too.
okay. Okay, so to accept the monthly correspondence, Mr. Jankowicz, you made a motion, I believe, and seconded by Mr. Ladati. All those in favor of accepting the monthly correspondence, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. So Vincent, if there's nothing else, do we want to do the roll call of resolutions, or do you want to review the other resolutions?
Yeah, well, the only other resolution we did have was resolution number 33 on the agenda, which is regarding a discussion we had in closed session a couple months ago. And it's a resolution to grievance, KEA grievance 21-2, settlement agreement that the board authorized our board attorney to negotiate with the KEA, and this is the results of it are in your packet, and that's the only other item outstanding. Okay, so if we are ready to vote, there are 31 resolutions, or 33 resolutions on the agenda. Do any of them need to be voted on separately?
No.
13 and number 23. Any other? Okay, so this is for resolutions 1 through 33 on the agenda, excluding number 13 and 23. Biner? Yes. Braun?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Drogan? Yes. Haberthur? Yes. Jankowitz? Yes. Ladati? Yes. Zimmerman? Panici?
Yes.
This is for resolution number 13 on the agenda. Biner? Yes. Braun?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Drogan? No. Haberthur?
Yes.
Jankowitz? Yes. Ladati?
Yes.
Zimmerman? Panici?
Yes.
Motion carries. And this is for resolution number 23 on the agenda. Biner? Yes. Braun?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Drogan? No. Haberthur? Yes. Jankowitz? Yes. Ladati?
Yes.
Zimmerman? Panici?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ganella. Okay. I believe we have to go into closed session
Yes, we do.
when you're ready.
Motion to go into closed?
Can I have a second, please? Okay, motion made by Mr. David, seconded by Mrs. Braun. All those in favor of going into closed session, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay. The Board of Education, be resolved, Board of Education, the Board of Education meet in private session from which the public shall be excluded to discuss the topics of litigation, attorney-client privilege, and a student personnel matter, which private discussion is being held pursuant to Section 7B and 8 of the Open Public Meetings Act. The matters under discussion will be disclosed to the public as soon as final decisions are made and voted upon. This concludes the live portion of the meeting, and we'll end the live stream at this point. So have a good evening, a nice, happy holiday, and Happy New Year.
Thank you.